Photography has the power to freeze time, to capture moments of triumph, sorrow, and the raw humanity of history. The first volume of the Photographic History of the Civil War takes us back to an era when the art of photography was still in its infancy. Yet, even then, these images preserve the faces, the landscapes, and the events that shaped a nation at war. Through these photographs, we gain a window into the past, an unfiltered view of a conflict that would define America. This video is the second in a series exploring these historic volumes, bringing these images to life and sharing the stories they hold. With each frame, we will uncover brief yet powerful glimpses of the men who fought, the places they stood, and the pivotal moments that turned the tide of war. In early 1862, the Union sought to break the Confederate defensive line that stretched from the Appalachian Mountains to the Mississippi River. The twin Confederate strongholds of Fort Henry on the Tennessee River and Fort Donelson on the Cumberland River stood as the gateways to the Deep South. The Union's plan to take these forts was spearheaded by Brigadier General Ulysses S. Grant and Flag Officer Andrew H. Foote, whose combined land and naval forces would strike a critical blow against the Confederacy. At the onset of the war, the Confederates fortified strategic locations along rivers and transportation routes. Camp Jackson in St. Louis was initially a Missouri State Guard encampment, but was swiftly seized by Union forces under Nathaniel Lyon, securing Missouri for the Union and paving the way for campaigns deeper into Confederate-held territory. Meanwhile, Camp Butler, a Union training facility in Illinois, prepared troops for the impending operations. Another critical staging ground was Camp Defiance, located at Cairo, Illinois, where Grant's army gathered alongside the Union's Western gunboat fleet. This stronghold at the confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers provided a launch point for offensive operations into Tennessee. Fort Henry, commanded by General Lloyd Tillman, was poorly positioned on a low, flood-prone area along the Tennessee River. By early February, heavy rains had turned the fort's earthworks into muddy quagmires, further weakening its defenses. Grant, leading a force of about 15,000 men, advanced overland while Foote's fleet of ironclad and wooden gunboats, USS Essex, USS Cincinnati, and others, steamed upriver to bombard the fort. On February 6th, Foote's gunboats engaged Fort Henry's batteries. The Confederate defenders, heavily outgunned, struggled to return effective fire. The Cincinnati, leading the attack, took multiple hits but remained operational, while the Essex was severely damaged when a Confederate shell struck her boiler, scalding and injuring numerous crewmen. Realizing that Fort Henry was indefensible, Tillman ordered most of his garrison to retreat toward Fort Donelson, leaving behind a small force to delay the Union assault. Just before Union forces arrived, Tillman surrendered to Foote, marking a swift and relatively bloodless victory. With Fort Henry fallen, Grant wasted no time in advancing eastward to Fort Donelson. Grant's reinforced army of 25,000 arrived by February 12th, encircling the fort, while Foote's flotilla advanced to provide naval support. Union forces probed defenses on February 13th, but met strong resistance. The next day, Foote's fleet attempted an assault, but was repelled by Confederate batteries. On February 15th, the Confederates launched a breakout, briefly opening an escape route, but miscommunication led to a Union counterattack. General Buckner was left to surrender to Grant on February 16th. Buckner sent a message to Grant requesting negotiations. Grant's reply was uncompromising. No terms except unconditional and immediate surrender can be accepted. Buckner, recognizing the hopelessness of his situation, surrendered 12,000 Confederate troops, marking the largest Union victory up to that point in the war. The capture of Forts Henry and Donelson was a devastating blow to the Confederacy. It opened the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers to Union control, allowing further penetration into the South. Tennessee's capital, Nashville, soon fell to Union forces, becoming a major supply and logistical hub for the remainder of the war. For the Confederacy, the loss of Fort Donelson shattered defensive lines in the West. The retreating Confederates abandoned Kentucky and much of Tennessee, giving the Union a foothold that would lead to future successes at Shiloh and beyond. The campaign also demonstrated the growing importance of riverine warfare. Union General Ulysses S. Grant pushed deeper into Tennessee, assembling a large force at Pittsburgh Landing, near the Tennessee River. Meanwhile, the Confederate Army of Mississippi, led by General Albert Sidney Johnston and General P.G.T. Beauregard, sought to launch a preemptive strike against Grant before Buell arrived. This decision led to the Battle of Shiloh, one of the bloodiest engagements of the Civil War. At dawn on April 6, 1862, the Confederate forces, about 44,000 strong, launched a surprise attack on Grant's unfortified camps near Shiloh Church. Among the Confederate artillery supporting the attack was the Washington Artillery of New Orleans, a famed unit under the command of Captain W. Irving Hodgson. The batteries played a critical role in the initial Confederate assault, bombarding Union positions and helping drive Grant's men back. The 9th Regiment of Indiana, part of General William Hazen's 19th Brigade, found itself heavily engaged as the Confederate assault gained momentum. Hazen's men, part of Buell's forces but already in the region, would later play a decisive role in stabilizing Union lines on the second day. The Confederates pushed the Union troops back toward Pittsburgh Landing, threatening to drive them into the Tennessee River. Grant's men desperately held their ground near a defensive position that became known as the Hornet's Nest, where intense fighting raged for hours. However, by late afternoon, Grant's battered army had been pushed close to the riverbank. As the battle raged near the river, Union gunboats USS Tyler and USS Lexington moved into position to provide artillery support. The Tyler, a wooden gunboat, fired shells into the Confederate lines, slowing their advance and helping prevent a total Union collapse. The bombardment from the river was crucial in giving Grant time to reorganize his troops. Additionally, the ships Tigris and Universe were used to ferry reinforcements and supplies across the Tennessee River, aiding Union logistics as they struggled to hold their last defensive line at Pittsburgh Landing. One of the most significant turning points of the battle occurred in the afternoon when Confederate General Albert Sidney Johnston was mortally wounded while leading a charge. Unaware of the severity of his injury, he continued to command for some time before collapsing. His death created confusion within Confederate ranks, and command fell to General Beauregard, who chose to halt the attack as night fell. During the night, the Army of the Ohio arrived, bringing much-needed reinforcements. At dawn on April 7th, Grant launched a counterattack with fresh troops, including the 9th Indiana Regiment and Hazen's 19th Brigade, leading the advance. The cavalry of the 4th Kentucky Volunteers played a key role in harassing the retreating Confederates, preventing them from regrouping effectively. The battle raged for several hours, but by the afternoon, the Confederates, having suffered heavy casualties, began withdrawing toward Corinth, Mississippi. Beauregard managed an orderly retreat, but Shiloh was a decisive Union victory. The battle was one of the bloodiest in American history, with over 23,000 casualties, more than in all previous American wars combined up to that point. The work of the 19th Regiment of Michigan Engineers, responsible for repairing roads and bridges around the Tennessee River and Big Barren Creek, ensured that Union forces could move efficiently in the weeks following the battle. Their contributions were critical in allowing Grant's army to maintain supply lines as they pursued the retreating Confederates. For the Confederacy, Shiloh was a costly setback. The loss of Johnston was a severe blow to Southern morale, and Grant emerged from the battle as a more experienced and determined commander. His belief in total war, wearing down the enemy through relentless assaults, would shape his leadership in future campaigns. The Battle of Shiloh demonstrated that the war would be long and bloody, with neither side willing to back down easily. Shiloh was a costly but vital step in the Union's plan. Control of the rivers meant control of the heartland, and with Tennessee bloodied, the focus shifted south. New Madrid, Island No. 10, and New Orleans remained formidable obstacles. The fight for the Mississippi was far from over. In our next video, we follow the Union's campaign to seize these strongholds, key battles that would bring them closer to splitting the Confederacy in two.